Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And thank you also very much for the invitation to speak at this second International Conference on Innovation in Learning, Instruction, and Teacher Education. If you pardon me just a moment, I will post my slides that I've prepared for my presentation. In my career, I've been a teacher, a principal, a school superintendent, and now I'm here at York University in the Faculty of Education, where I hold a UNESCO chair in reorienting education towards sustainability. I say this simply to point out that the theme of your conference this year is very relevant, and I appreciate the invitation to share some of my thoughts on education systems holding a key to unlock a better and a more sustainable world. There are many challenges to achieving this better world that our students will face in their future, and the education they receive both now and throughout their lives will greatly determine the quality of their life and their overall well-being. So if we look at some of the challenges, we're expecting another 2.5 billion people to arrive on the planet during the life of our current elementary school students. And so if we think of the different issues that they will be facing, how will they peacefully address these? Now, these are large global issues, but we also will have local issues that they will need to address, environmental, social, economic issues, and so on, that hopefully our school systems will be able to help prepare them for these grand challenges. So the grand challenges we see it is how can we collaboratively and peacefully create global systems that ensure both the current humanity's ability to thrive, not just survive, but to thrive in an equitable manner. And at the same time, how can we ensure the Earth's resilience and capacity and to support future generations? Now, the answer to all this that we count on is the concept of sustainable development that the world agreed to in 1987. And to try and implement this concept of development that meets the needs of the current generation without compromising the ability of future generations, we have had several implementation plans. The first one that sort of carried from 1992 through to 2000 was Agenda 21, or the Agenda for the 21st Century. The second one that ran from 2000 to 2014 was the Millennium Development Goals. And we are currently into our third, called the 2030 Agenda, that will run from 2015 through to 2030. Here you see 17 global issues that the world leaders have agreed to address. They're not the only issues, but they are the 17 big ones that the world has agreed that we can come up with a work plan. We have 17 goals, 169 targets that we're trying to work towards. And you can see that the fourth goal is geared towards education. I must say that we shouldn't think of these as independent goals, but we should think of them in their entirety because they are all interwoven, linked together, and so on. You can't address one without working on the other. Now, if we look at the targets within SDG 4, you'll see 7 of them. Most of them, 1 through 6, are ones that our current school systems and so on are trying to work upon. The one that is unique and different is 4.7. That all learners by 2030 will have the knowledge and skills to address sustainable development. If we look at the target in more depth, the wording goes, By 2030, ensure all learners acquire knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including through education for sustainable development. And it goes on to mention global citizenship. Now, as well as these two items being key to SDG 4, the United Nations General Assembly has also pointed out that education for sustainable development, as well as being this integral part of SDG 4, is also a key enabler of implementing all the other sustainable development goals as well. Now, so what is education for sustainable development? Well, in essence, let me begin by saying it's not a separate discipline. Okay. We're talking about it as a purpose of education. It is the outcome of all of the different aspects of education, formal, non-formal, informal, and so on, to try and achieve this more sustainable future. But there are four key aspects. One aspect is access and retention in quality education. And it's up to each country to determine what are the individual aspects of quality. The second, though, is recognizing it's our most educated countries that often leave the deepest ecological footprints and have some of the greatest injustices and so on. So it is reorienting our existing education systems from a goal of development to one of sustainable development. The third aspect is building a knowledgeable public who will act as citizens in a sustainable way and support governments that have enlightened legislation. They will also be knowledgeable consumers and live their life in that way. The fourth is addressing training systems. Now, this global citizenship, though, this is again, not a separate subject, but it is a way of infusing in our education systems a sense of being global citizens. It is a way of interconnectedness with others, building a sense of solidarity, and not just limited to other humans, but to life on the planet as we know it. So it's not this challenge to national borders or anything, but it is really a state of mind. There are two aspects, however, to global citizenship, as well as the state of mind and so on, is delivering the knowledge, skills, and abilities for them to perform and to become engaged as knowledgeable citizens. So it's giving them the skills to articulate the knowledge of how to influence government and how to participate as a citizen. So what we try to do is bring these two together. On the left, you will see the knowledge and skills of education for sustainable development, knowing and understanding the issues that are involved in sustainability. On the other hand, with global citizenship education, it is giving them both the knowledge and skills to become involved, as well as building within them the desire to become involved. It is one thing to have knowledge, it's the other thing to act upon it. And so together, we look at head, heart, hands, and so on, and addressing the reasons for education, right? The learning to know, learning to do, to be, and to live together in hopefully sustainable ways, seeking that kind of synergy. Now, as well as working with the Delors Report of 1996, with that knowing to know, to be, to do, and to live together, UNESCO is also trying to reimagine in what is a huge program called the Futures of Education, where thousands and thousands of people around the world have been consulted and asking, what should the futures of education, can we be? Can we imagine it in 2050? and what are what would be the needs and so on for them. Now, UNESCO is also consulted and held a survey amongst 58,000 educators, asking teachers, are you prepared to teach education for sustainable development and global citizenship education? And as you can see, the answers are an awful lot of teachers really do not know or understand or feel competent. The green ones there show education for sustainable development. And they, in the survey, here's two examples, one on climate change and one on sustainable consumption. And you can see that over 25% here do not feel comfortable. And the blue is the global citizenship education. And we're looking at human rights and gender equity and so on. Again, very low. Overall, less than half really feel that they're very ready for this. So UNESCO has come up with a program to try and address this, a parallel program to the 2030 Agenda and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. They have ESD for 2030 with 5 priority areas, one being advancing policy, another transforming our learning environments, our school settings, and so on. The third, addressing building the capacity of teachers and educators in general. Fourth, empowering youth, in building that global citizenship approach. And then the fifth being working in our local communities and service. But they're doing this building on what we already know in our strengths of the idea of building on the cognitive skills, the behavioral skills, the socio-emotional skills, and then working through into concrete actions that lead then to the Sustainable Development Goals. But it is not only UNESCO. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, has come forward now just with what they call the Learning Compass for 2030, that it works in synergy with the Sustainable Development Goals. And they are saying that the ultimate goal is well-being for all. And I would interpret for all as, again, not being limited to humans. But they're saying that math, language, science, and so on, which they traditionally report on through PISA and so on, we also need to address values, attitudes, perspectives, and so on in addressing the whole child. Now, UNESCO on the right, under their stages of transformation, they too are saying, yes, these things are extremely important, the acquisition of knowledge, information, and so on, understanding a critical analysis, what is true, what is right, and so on, and exposure and experience. But what they are saying that is so important, how do we move from awareness to action? And they're saying that a key step in that is transformative education. How do we move from just hands and head? How do we engage the heart? How do we build that? So these are quests that are there in the roadmap. In moving forward then, may I suggest that the SDGs be considered as a framework for teaching, learning, and the school as a whole, so that it brings relevance to our education system in trying to create a better future for all. And using these as a focal point for reviewing and perhaps revising our teacher education programs. In our research, focusing on how do we create more transformative moments in education? How do we prepare people for change in lifelong learning? And it's addressing local sustainability issues as a way of strengthening our community relations. So I hope these thoughts are of use over the next 2 days of the conference. I would like to end here by wishing you well and have a wonderful conference. Thanks again. for inviting me to be a part of it. Thank you.